And to me, and I'm sure a lot of people think this, it looks like it's straight out of a sci-fi movie. And not only does it look cool, but it has a ton of upgraded features that we've never seen in spacesuit helmets before. Specifically, you can see the side profile of the helmet here. The entire helmet is 3D printed out of ABS, which makes it super light. It limits down on heavy materials like metals, and they tried to make it as easy to manufacture as possible for when they custom fit it to every astronaut. You can go to the next slide, please. Here is a kind of close-up view of Doug wearing the helmet, and you can see up in the chin bar area, there's the rubber gasket that goes all the way around, which is to seal the pressure in, as well as you have the 2 latches in the front of the helmet, which actually require 2 buttons to be pressed to open up the clamshell visor. And then going back further on the bar, you have a little round hole. And from our observations, we believe that that is a purge valve for the used air of the astronauts to vent back out into the cabin of the spacecraft. Next slide, please. Here's a closer view of what that clamshell effect does. So instead of just the visor coming back on the helmet, the entire helmet kind of rotates back. And like Kat said, this is one piece, so it's integrated into the suit and it can't be taken off. And what that means is that it needs to be very important. And Bob and Doug have actually noted how comfortable this helmet is. They said it can be worn easily for longer periods of time, which makes it not being able to take it off not a problem. Next slide, please. And here is an image of them doing a pressure test. And you can see up how the helmet fits when the suits are under pressure. And one thing that's different about this helmet is because it's integrated into the suit, it has no neck ring. And because there's no neck ring, that limits, again, down on weight, and it makes it more comfortable because like previous suits, the big metal neck ring made it really uncomfortable and really hard to have a lot of mobility in the suit. So yeah, and now we'll pass it on to Nick to talk about the layers and materials in the SpaceX suit.
Yeah, so the SpaceX suit is really intriguing. It's kind of hard to see what's going on under the hood, if you will, under that cover layer. But really, the suit has been described by Benji Reed as having 2 main layers. It's very probable that the suit actually has multiple actual layers, but 2 main layers, which are described as the outer layer or cover layer, and the inner bladder layer, which actually holds the pressure of the suit, allowing the astronauts to stay safe in the event of a decompression event. So these layers in traditional spacesuit technology, the bladder layer is typically a mylar material, very good at holding air in without leaks, similar to balloons and high durability tires. But then the outer layer has to have Nomex and Teflon materials to be more fire resistant and temperature insulating in the event that the capsule loses temperature regulation. So as mentioned before, the suit is one piece. So it's very easy to stow, and donning the suit requires that the astronauts put the suit on, kind of unzip the crotch area that Kat referenced, and kind of dive up and into the suit. And the helmet is also integrated, so they'll slide right into the helmet. And the only other zippers that are there are on the gloves, which Mike will talk about momentarily. And there are two pressure zippers, one on each glove and then one on the crotch. So as I said, it's easy to stow. The elbows and the knees have knee like convolutes to allow for some of that mobility in the legs and the arms. There's actually reflective material kind of around the outer layer. So if there's any reason the crew might be picked up at night, their suits will reflect any light coming onto them. Interestingly, the patches that are traditionally sewn and woven are now vinyl, kind of upgrading to the modern era. And we're not sure of how the suit actually defogs via the helmet, but it's speculated that air gets to circulate through the helmet and the entire suit and kind of processes that fog. So I'll pass it to Mike, and he'll tell you about the gloves, which are very unique to the suit.
So what's unique about the gloves, and thank you, Nick, for discussing the layers, is you can actually see the first zipper, the white thin zipper, is the outer or cover of the glove, and then you have the red tag, which is the inner inner layer, which is like the bladder system of holding in pressure and ensuring that the pressure doesn't leak to ensure safety for the astronauts. And what's unique about the glove is, Cobra, can we go to the next slide real quick? Is that since it's one layer, and what you can do is you can roll up the suit if you take off the inner and outer layer of the zippers, and you can roll it up and use it to either grasp on things easier, such as touchscreens or manual control options that are what's in the Crew Dragon capsule. So here you can see the touchscreen, and what the touchscreen allows them to do is there's 3, and also there's I believe a tablet as well. And so what's unique about this is that these gloves are touchscreen sensitive, and so you can either use the Dragon Crew capsule either with your gloves on or with them off. And what's different about this is that there's no bearings like a traditional astronaut spacesuit, where the gloves immediately can be like separated, disconnected from the suit. These can just be simply rolled on or be kept on with ease of comfort, because they're designed not only for like as a one-piece fitting, but they're specifically customized for each astronaut individually.
And then I'll take it back. So we're going to talk a little bit about mission ops, kind of how this suit that we've just described, kind of from top to bottom, fits into the whole operations of this mission coming up, which we're hoping launches tomorrow or in the next few days, weather permitting. And through this launch, we'll actually get a ton more information about how these suits are used in real space missions. This will be the first time this suit has been to space. They've done plenty of pressure tests, but we'll hopefully learn more about the donned off procedure. It's interesting, Kubrick, if you could show the slide. So how does the suit actually get pressure? This is very unique to this suit. So here you can see it kind of looks like a seamless suit. There's no ports. A lot of spacesuits are famous for having shiny metal ports on the suit that you have your big hoses connect to. Well, SpaceX has done something innovative here and hidden the port in a very slim, streamlined way. If you look at Bob on the left side of the screen, on his thigh, there's a small little cover. That's where the actual magic happens. So if we go to the next slide, you can see some of the pressure testing. So you see on the left, Doug is hooked up to a portable ventilator, and you can see that the port is right there on his thigh. And not only does that port allow for pressure and ventilation, but we'll see also it allows for power and communications, all through one port that seamlessly integrates into the Dragon. If you kind of look at the pressure testing going on here, on the top of Doug's thigh, you can see that that line is plugged in, but there will be a better shot of it in the next slide. So you can see actually here that they're kind of covering the valve with their hands, but I have a clear shot in the next one. But here is interesting there too. The harness system that actually holds them in is like a 5-point harness similar to race car seats. And you can see the Dragon is really inspired by that kind of style of seats. And as Kat had mentioned, it's very fitting to the suit, which really enhances safety and comfort. And that's part of the harness system. You see the harnesses have white straps on them. That's for quick removal of the crew if they need to be rescued. And Kobe, if you go to the next slide. This is very unique, very exciting for spacesuits. This kind of port, it's almost like just one plug, one cable, and your suit's all good to go. You've got pressure, power, communications all through that port. So you can see in the smaller circle on the image, that's where it plugs in, and the Dragon cable is actually very thin and it goes nicely into the seat. And in the enhanced blown up view, you can see what that port actually looks like. And it's looking like there's separate ports for pressure, power, and communications there on the suit. So we're very excited about that in terms of spacesuit technology, something that's a little more streamlined than having so many different lines and ports everywhere. So we can just go to the next slide. And as we were talking about, the suit interfaces with the Dragon capsule via their hands. They're using their hands very constantly to maneuver all controls of the suit and of the spacecraft as well. And at times they might even take off the suit. And the suit is very easy to don and doff on their own. And they might stow the suit in the Dragon during this mission as well. it's important to note that Demo 2, this launch coming up, is a test flight. Jim Bridenstine loves to mention that this is a test flight. The purpose of this mission is to test the vehicle, and test the spacesuits, and so the astronauts can really get an understanding of how the Dragon ecosystem really works, and that involves spacesuit testing. They'll even be sleeping during the missions, just so they get a full view of everything. And if you look on the thigh of the astronaut in this image, there's even an iPad. So SpaceX is really going for the full kind of future of spacecraft feeling here. And that iPad can be strapped to their thigh of their spacesuit via a special Velcro thigh hugger. But it can also be put above the touchscreen panel, and I kind of like to call it the thigh pad. So next slide. We're really excited for this mission. We're really excited to see Bob and Doug return us to the International Space Station from American soil on American rockets, as Jim loves to put it. The Dragon spacecraft is really awesome. So if you guys in the audience, anyone who's watching, we've been taking questions. We'll be answering questions about the mission, about the suits, and we really enjoy talking to you guys. So thank you. And we'll start the Q&A now.
All right, thanks everyone. Just one clarification, this is the first time the suit is going to fly in space with humans inside of it. There's been two suits that have flown to space, the first being Starman, which you can see in the background of Chase's Tesla Roadster there, and the second being Ripley, that was part of the demo flight where they wanted to, put the actual suit in the right position and also do radiation measuring and all the fun stuff that you would do, make sure all the systems are flowing and check out all those things first. So we do have a bunch of questions, but before that, we definitely want to highlight what all these students have been working on over the last 3 years in the lab. So we actually have our lab video that we've got queued up. I hope that some of you have already seen it, but just for those who might be new to this whole thing, here's a 4 minutes of awesome, as I like to call it. Edited, produced, put together by Nick Lopak. And yeah, just enjoy the video, and we'll be back with Q&A for the second half of this.
Settle down. they don't, then I won't let it get to me.
Peace out, yo. Spacesuit up.
All right, so I hope that played smoothly for people. If not, we dropped the link in our Facebook page chat of the live chat of this, but also it's on our Facebook page. It's pretty much everywhere on all our social media at Spacesuit Up. So we've got a bunch of questions. What I'll do is I'll just kind of go through them in order, and anyone who wants to jump in. Some of these things we have covered, but people might have missed certain parts of the chat or might want to hear it again. So we'll kind of just bounce them around the team here. So from Kate was asking what the spacesuits are made out of.
Sure. So I covered the materials earlier. So spacesuits are made of a lot of different materials, but particularly with this suit, that what we know, what's been mentioned by the SpaceX team, is that for the bladder layer, it's likely they're using a mylar material that's common in most spacesuit designs, which are used to hold the pressure in. The white outer layer that you see commonly through all these pictures is a mix of Teflon and Nomex. Both of these materials are known for having high temperature resistance. So in the event of a fire or loss of temperature regulation, these things would act as an insulating material that keeps the pressure in. And as Nico mentioned when he commented on the helmet's design, it's actually a 3D printed helmet using ABS plastic, which is a standard 3D printing material. As far as other materials, there are touchscreen sensitive gloves. So that's another common coating, and a lot of common things actually used on the suit.
Yeah, and there's actually kind of a side follow-up question. Somebody was asking about what the zippers specifically were made out of. That's a very specific question. It's a great question because they said theirs are always jamming. Maybe we can kind of reiterate the ops about how do you zip your gloves up. We'll go to our glove expert on this.
Yeah, so not really too sure on what the materials are made of, although the outer layer zipper seems like a typical regular zipper, but the inner layer that keeps the pressure in would be, assuming very thick, high fidelity zippers, something to keep pressure in very tightly. It is known that zippers have been used on previous IVA suits, so it could be following along those trend lines, or something that could be used, for example, like scuba diving like suits that keep water like in, like those, like depending on the suit, could have really thick zippers to make sure it doesn't get like stick or like jammed when like unzipping or trying to take it off. I'm sure it's probably coated very well. And they've ran hundreds of tests on simulations, testing what it's like taking the suit on and off, especially the gloves, and using it on the control panels and touchscreens to make sure that everything hopefully goes well for the launch tomorrow.
Yeah, and so that was from Elizabeth Forbes Wallace. Thanks again for your questions. There's a few questions. The other thing to kind of point out on the suits, because this is kind of a novel way of doing gloves, is that before they would use these hard steel kind of connection rings, and so that's what we see on a lot of the other suits. And one of the other things we do see on a lot of IVA and EVA suits is the pressure layers usually retain the shape by a link net type material that usually helps distribute the pressure across the suit materials. This is a kind of a hard question. So, I mean, people are kind of open to their opinion on this, but Jesse Burdett was asking if COVID-19 messed up anything with the Crew Dragon launch. That's, I don't know if, I mean, that's kind of an opinion question. I don't know if anyone wants to kind of chime in on that, because we're not SpaceX, we're the, part of Embry-Riddle. So
just from seeing pictures of them getting the suits on and off and doing testing, all of the staff members have been wearing face masks and I assume gloves as well.
Even hair caps as well.
So
yeah,
I assume NASA and SpaceX are making it top priority to make sure that there's no COVID at all. Hopefully not within the staff members and the astronauts.
Someone did ask this in the press briefing, actually, and one of the Johnson execs had actually mentioned that they're sterilizing the rooms and making sure that everything is wiped down, like in mission control, before they actually let anybody in. So they are taking precautions, but I don't know if anything's affected the actual progression of events.
I can also comment on this a little bit. Working with a team at Johnson Space Center over the spring that had a hand in training. And I know that over the course of them prepping for the launch in Cape Canaveral, they basically always go through a series of quarantines, especially right before launch. So I know that extra precautions were taken to isolate the crew members before launch, as well as during their normal quarantine preparations. So I don't know that it affected it too much. Ultimately, we'd have to ask them in person, but it sounds like it was somewhat still within line of NASA's strict safety precautions.
Yeah, we're just showing some NASA B-roll of their training there in the inside, but yeah, this is a very interesting time that we live in, and it's also unique and fantastic that we can actually have the operations team come together to be able to get this crew launched safely off the ground, hopefully. And that's very challenging when you want to have your entire team there. Even the quarantine of the families is tricky, where the families flew out just yesterday, and it's a different kind of feeling to it. I'm friends with a lot of people in the press that have mentioned that they're upset, or they understand, but they're upset that they can't be there covering it. So it's almost like a quieter atmosphere in general. There's a lot of us that were able to attend the last shuttle flights, where it was a lot of fun and very crowded though. All right, let's go to the next question. Lots of little questions here popping up. Let's see. Okay, so this is about temperature. Jesse James Burdett asked, does the suit have any sort of integrated heat modules, or is it already temperature sensitive? So you can add those in. If somebody wants to talk about temperature, how do they do temperature in the suit?
It seems the temperature is regulated similar to most IVA suits, where it's simply through the air temperature that comes into the suit. If you notice in some of our slides, there is even a portable ventilator that the astronauts can carry with them out on their way to the pad, so they can regulate their own temperature in the Florida heat. The Dragon capsule is also temperature regulated, so you have suit regulation of temperature and Dragon temperature regulation. So the suit's more of a backup, and also, well, it's absolutely necessary. If there wasn't cooled air, the suit would get hot very quickly from the body heat of the astronaut. Cool air enters the suit, and through the ports on the sides of the helmet that Nico introduced, used or spent air is exhausted into the Dragon's air system, and that's also ventilated. So there is mainly air ventilation of regulation of temperature. I haven't heard anything about heating pads, whether that's in the suit or the Dragon seats themselves.
Yeah, it's most likely just all through the air cooling. Other suits have used liquid cooling ventilation garments. Those are usually used for EVA to help with the body temperature regulation. But that is something that smart materials can help with, humidity, moisture, sweating, and controlling that so that it's comfortable. Something we didn't talk about is the timeline. 4 hours before launch is when the astronauts put these suits on. And then approximately 2 hours, like halfway through that, is when they're actually seated in the capsule. So they kind of have it's not 2 hours to get there. It's pretty quick to get to the launch pad. But then they have the 2 hours that they're on their backs, and then the launch occurs. And then of course they have to check out all the systems. So they're still in the suit. So we're talking about at least 6+ hours inside of that spacesuit. And I kind of think of it more of as like you're wearing a dry suit more than anything else. You just can't take it off. So everything has to be taken care of, if you will. So we have a question. This is it's always fun to take the offbeat questions. So for Miss Cat, is going to outer space scary?
Great question. I think for each astronaut, depending on how you ask them, they might give you a different answer. But I remember Luca Parmitano, who's a famous Italian astronaut who actually had a very scary instance happen to him. He made a very poignant quote about how he doesn't think that any astronaut doesn't experience fear. And that it's something that they're able to use to gauge safety and be able to approach the risks with much more careful consideration. But some astronauts may give you a much more like bravado answer and say they don't experience fear. But I think that these astronauts are so well prepared for the experience that nervousness is normal, but they're going in knowing what they're in for. So it's all about preparation, I think, at the end of the day.
Awesome. We had a question later on that was asking about, could this suit be used for an EVA? So who would like to answer that question? Nico, do you want to hit that one?
Yeah, definitely. As far as we know, that this suit is only for IVA and for use in the Dragon capsule, and maybe for use with the Starship later on once that starts flying. SpaceX has released, little animations of the suit going out on Mars and that kind of thing. But as far as what we know about the suit, that's really just a press, try and get hype up. This suit is designed to work with the capsule. That plug on the thigh that Nick talked about, the astronauts really depend on that for air and temperature regulation and pressure, and they wouldn't have that capability outside the capsule. So this suit is purely for riding the Dragon up to the International Space Station and back. And we don't have any information on whether SpaceX is developing an EVA suit or not, but that'd be really cool information to hopefully find out in the future. So yeah.
Yeah, hopefully our next spacesuit chat will be talking about that, right? But yeah, there's a lot more significant layers that are needed for EVA. Mostly it's the thermal environment, dealing with micrometeorite protection, and radiation. So without the right layering, it's not really safe to leave the capsule. In a crazy emergency situation, you could literally inflate the astronaut with a emergency oxygen bottle and push them from one airlock to the other, but they're going to get cold extremely fast. This is not something that can regulate the temperature properly. So a fun question, since you mentioned riding the Dragon, this is my question for you guys, surprise question. So all these suits have had names, like not all of them, but a lot of them have had names. The Russian suits have traditionally been in some type of bird. And so my question for you is, what would you name the SpaceX spacesuit if you needed to give it like a cool design name?
They're so good at naming things at SpaceX. I'm surprised they haven't named it themselves. but I think Starman has been so iconic, and I don't want to appropriate the suit's gender or anything, but Starman to me is what I see when I look at the suit. It's just so, that mission was iconic to me, and I'll have to think on a better name, but really
Okay.
Starman is what I associate with the suit.
Yeah, you caught me off guard for a second. I'm gonna have to probably go with Nick with Starman, or even like Starboy, taking it from like The Weeknd and the Daft Punk type of vibe that SpaceX kind of gives off with them. So I'll probably go with like either of those two names, honestly.
Maybe like Star Walker.
Yeah, well, that's a good one.
There you go.
Yeah. Star Walker. Anyone else have one?
I mean, he's known for naming things after science fiction. So, you know, I don't know that I could predict what Elon would say, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was something like a stormtrooper type deal, just from the full white. But
yeah,
might have a series of numbers and letters. I don't know.
yes.
Yeah. So I've got something to share with you guys. I don't know if I've ever shown this to my students, well, really maybe only to a handful of people, but a decade ago, I interviewed for the spacesuit design engineer position with SpaceX, and kind of as a joke, but also just kind of for fun, because I like to throw things that are fun in there. I had my name for it, and I would name it the Excalibur, because it would be the protection for dragon riders. And then as you can see in the corner there, if you can't read, it says suit not to scale or reality. So that would just be something fun to do. So if you have an idea in the audience, throw it up in the Facebook chat. Maybe we'll be able to catch them and pop them into our stream here as well. Does anyone else have any before we go to the next question?
I was gonna say something about like riding a dragon, like the rider or something like that. That'd be cool. And you could probably make an acronym out of it.
Yeah, definitely. You gotta have, yeah. We love acronyms. It's kind of one of those things like, oh, everything's an acronym. But then once you're like involved with spaceflight activities, you're like, you start to get addicted to these acronyms, and you're like, I need to have acronyms everywhere. They're part of the personality of the spaceflight program. They give meaning. They have obviously a lot of thought that goes behind them. But it's also something that you don't want to be like laughing at it, but you do want to smile when you hear the acronym. And there's a lot of cool space acronyms out there, like the current jetpack piece that's on the EMU EVA suit. See, there's a whole bunch of acronyms right there. It's called the Safer, and like what cooler device than Safer to get you home safe with a little jetpack. So we've got a really intense question here, a great question from Jason Reimuller, who we know from Project Possum. And he was asking, what about the post-landing considerations like the preserver units and egress bottles? That's a tough question. Does anyone want to see if they can tiptoe around that one and give some sort of info?
Visually from the suit, this is all speculation, nothing I've heard about confirmation, but for rescue operations with the Dragon, I believe separate rafts not integrated to the suit will have to be used for flotation in terms of rescue. I don't think the suit, like the ASIS from the shuttle era, I don't think this suit has any integrated life-preserving oceanic devices, basically. I think it would be a raft system where they have self-inflating devices that are part of the emergency protocol.
Yeah, one other thing to note here is that the previous suits for the space shuttle program, the ASIS, which is also an acronym, are also known as the pumpkin suits. And why were they pumpkin? Because they were safety orange, so they could pick them out of the ocean. So that's part of the ops and safety side of things as well. So this is a question about fit. What is the smallest height an astronaut could be for the suit? It's almost a trick question.
I mean, in theory, any size, perhaps, if the suits are tailor-made, unless there's Dragon requirements. I'm sure there are requirements for the seats, just like a roller coaster. There's probably a minimum height and a maximum height for the seats of the vehicle itself. But in terms of the suit, it seems everything is custom made down from the helmet to the layers, the boots, the gloves. So in theory, anybody could have one, but it's about whether you can integrate into the Dragon itself.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of it. It's not just the suit, it's the seat, it's everything else that's around them that's part of the system. So if the seat can accommodate the person suited, then that's kind of that's a big part of it as well. We got a lot of messages and hellos and thank you for your work. So thank you for our people that friends and family. We answered one of the questions, but just hello to 17-year-old Tapaswani who met through Janet's Planet's channel. And keep asking those hard questions. You got awesome questions on all the things that we've connected with. Hello to Tahir, who is also asking us questions and saying thank you for our work and our knowledge. So there's a bunch. Let's see what else we got here. So those ones are kind of repeating. So I'm glad we're answering the question, getting to these questions. So comparisons or comments from previous or astronaut candidates about the new spacesuit design, any former astronauts weighing in on the new design. So, I mean, those are kind of, analytical or anecdotal that we've heard from, through the grapevine. So I don't know if you guys, we've already mentioned that the current astronauts that are wearing them have said that they're comfortable. Have you guys heard from other astronauts what their feedback is and, what they've noticed?
There are some articles and interviews with Benji Reed, who we've referenced a few times. While he's not the suit, he's not a suit architect. However, he's involved in the entirety of the mission, the mission development. I've heard that not only are Bob and Doug highly involved in the suit's design, but of course all the commercial crew astronauts and even former astronauts weighed in on this design. And I think the reason the suit looks the way it is and functions the way it is heavily inspired and pushed by things that astronauts want. Like the key takeaways from this suit for me are ease of use, such as the gloves, the helmet visor goes up very quickly and easily. Weight wise, it's very lightweight and it can be stowed easily. I can very much picture astronauts asking for those things when you compare this suit to an ASIS, which was the heritage, the prior suit for the shuttle. So I think this suit's design heavily influenced by astronaut involvement, but of course SpaceX has their flair and wants to make it look good and function as the astronauts request.
To add on to that really quickly, Doug, who is actually flying on the mission, he flew on the last shuttle mission, so he has experience wearing the previous pumpkin suit on the shuttle, and he, he's mentioned how comfortable the suit is. So, coming from somebody that's an astronaut that's flown on the previous method of space transportation, that really shows how SpaceX has designed the suit with astronauts' input in mind.
Awesome. So we're getting to the end of our kind of hour here. So I do want to wrap up because there's so many things that are happening on this T-1 day before launch. And I want to make sure that people can tune into as many of these cool things as possible. We're happy to answer more questions through, social media, Facebook comments, chat, Twitter, Instagram, all the above. Our YouTube channel features all our videos as well. So please check that out. There's a nice comment here about they should, Roseanne mentioned that they should name it Hiccup, like How to Train Your Dragon. So yeah, there's that whole connection of, naming things also connects it to your audience a little bit as well. So it's, it was mentioned about sci-fi culture that Kat brought up, and, directly linking it to the next generation is important too, because, those are our future Mars walkers. First things first though, right now, at least it's onto the moon. Or back to the moon, or however you want to phrase it. I'm all just for saying to the moon. And so with that, I'd like to just kind of go around one more time just to see if anyone has any last little bits of comments or things that they've noticed that that we missed out on from our team here. And then we'll wrap up. So just kind of go around the room again, same order we started with Nick.
I think we covered a lot about the SpaceX suit. It's something that, we've been just looking in the past few days collecting this kind of research. And while the suit was announced, back in 2017, only now that we're seeing Bob and Doug perform these activities and NASA sharing more about the program, are we learning the real details of the suit. And it's very exciting for all us who like spacesuits here to see a new suit be used in a new vehicle, new everything. It's exciting for everybody involved, and I'm looking forward to the NASA will be actually live streaming a feed from the capsule for the entire duration of the mission. So you won't want to miss that. That's never really been done before on any other missions, where we'll be able to see exactly what's going on. And I'm sure we'll catch a lot more about how the suit works through that kind of content.
Yeah,
Thank you,
Nick's
Mike.
definitely right. I'll be interested to see like how long it takes to like put the suit on, or just how the communications work, just the ins and outs of the suit and how like it actually operates in the capsule. The astronauts, I believe, are also going to be sleeping in the capsule too. So that'll be, I can't imagine sleeping, I don't know, or staying in the capsule that long, but I'm excited as well. And me and Nick and I will probably be going to see the launch also in person too, as well. So.
Nico, I think you're next.
Yeah, I'm actually came down to Florida to watch this launch in person, so I'm very excited. It's going to be just amazing to see this next step in technology actually come to fruition and actually fly to space with humans. Yeah, so that's what I'm excited for.
Cool. Chase?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just excited as everyone else to see it. I'm really bummed that I won't actually be able to go to Florida to see the launch. I'm stuck here in Houston, but I'm really excited to see it go up and to see how well the whole system operates, especially with the human element now integrated in it. And I'm excited to see how the astronauts perform and how well everything goes. It's going to be very exciting, and it's a next big step in normalizing space and bringing it towards the commercial sector, especially for not necessarily the elite of astronauts, but potentially for a wider potential clientele. So I'm excited to see where this goes and what future brings us.
Okay, and I guess I won't be able to see it in person, unfortunately. Although I got to see the demo launch last year when it first launched on the Falcon 9, which was life-changing. So I'm absolutely just on the edge of my seat for this. I'm honestly, I think that the way that they've designed everything to be super visually appealing as well as very tech forward, I think is going to inspire a lot of people to bring their career to space and see where this will bring us. So I'm excited, and I think it's going to really, as someone mentioned, normalizing space travel from U.S. soil again. So I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Yeah, this is a very exciting time. I think the best word for I guess my generation, there's age is not required, is that we've been very patiently waiting for human spaceflight to return from Florida. And this is going to be pretty exciting. If it happens tomorrow, that's great. If it happens the next day, that's great. If it happens is what matters the most. This is a big step in commercial spaceflight, a whole new way of doing contracts, developing spacecraft. And it's happened rather rapidly. I mean, it's happened just as fast as it would to create a whole new vehicle. So this is a whole new way of doing business as well. And so it's exciting. We're going to be watching the launch, hopefully, from a very remote spot on a beach closer to Port Orange, up where we are, and staying, I don't really like social distancing. I like physical distancing because we should be social and talk to each other, but we need to be physically distant, of course. And so this is a difficult time, and I hope everyone's enjoying all these online activities that can help you count down to human spaceflight. Just a quick thank you again to the partners that help us stream today. So Explore Mars, Janet's Planet, and Stardom. And then, of course, all the people who help share this online. We hope you've enjoyed our show. So please check us out on social media. And without further ado, just kind of wrap it up and thank our students here for putting up with me and being pushing them a little bit to hey, let's do this, because I think it was well worth it. And we actually had a multiple hour conversation on this a few nights ago, kind of counting down to it and picking apart all the different things and organizing how we would talk to our audience. And we're like, we should broadcast this. I'm like, well, we don't need a 2-hour event or 3-hour event. We need a half-hour overview. So All the best, everyone. Be safe, take care, and spacesuit up.
Peace it up. See you later.